Hey guys, here we are going into the 7th round. Yeah, the fight, getting a little closer each round, right? Rounds 1, 2, and 4 I thought were like pretty landslide rounds for Kovalev, dictated off of his probing and his lead hand dominance and just controlling that distance and making Andre Ward make mistakes to get inside, right? And that's where he wants to be. Whereas the other rounds were dictated a little bit less by that kind of stuff. I think in the last round, the best punch was a straight right hand as Andre Ward came in for a body shot. He had been setting up a little bit of work where he would feint to the body, or he would jab to the body so that he could start jabbing upstairs. So Andre Ward showing that he's got some craft, that he's setting some traps, and we're gonna kind of look at this round and now that we're figuring out what Andre Ward's trying to do with the dips down, right? So he's got the little trick where he dips down and he comes under your jab if you jab. He's got the trick where he's jabbing to your body and then he starts coming upstairs. Very crafty, very like clever stuff. But he doesn't, not to take away from his work, his body of work, but he doesn't actually do a lot of damage with his shots, right? Being that his lead hand is his dominant hand, and the fact that he doesn't land a lot of power punches, right? Most of his punches are jabs, even though when he gets credit for fighting on the inside, those are technically power punches, because you're not really in an athletic stance. You're not really doing a lot of damage. But that part aside, let's go ahead and get into this round and see how much more the fight starts to develop and what course it starts to take. Oh, I got to take off that sound. Oh, it's going to kill me. All right, so the first thing that happens, comes straight out. Ward starts slipping to the inside, tries to smother him, switching stances. And Kovalev gets kind of a hold of his head, while he throws that hook. And Ward grabs him, gets his arm around his body, but then Kovalev grabs his arm so he can't. I think those were low blows. I think that third one was a low blow too. So this one's low. So those punches don't really count. I think that was low too, but I'm not super sure. But the transitions from holding to not holding, very smart. It's very clever from Ward, right? He goes from holding with one arm to punching with the other, so that he can land shots. And the way that kind of works out is that the judges are sitting, I think they're sitting in different spaces around the ring, so they're all going to get different views of the fight, and they're not always going to be able to tell if he's holding and hitting or if he's just landing punches because he's being held. It's, the different angles on the fight. The judges are going to see different things. So he's going to get away with it. Some of those punches, even though they're not legal, they're going to be scored, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is a good job from Kovalev right here. Feints him, makes him think he's going to throw that left hook, and then just like the one where he got under it earlier, he comes in, closes the distance, and then Kovalev lands a great body shot right there. It's not like super scoring with the knuckle part of the glove, but it's a good shot. It's probably harder than the shots that Andre Ward is landing because he's in athletic stance. And then after he pushes him off and controls him on his way out. Some smart work from Kovalev to land some clean punches, right? Baiting him into like walking in and then landing a shot. Kovalev trying to use lead hand dominance, trying to control him. But as soon as he starts putting his hand out there, Ward's like, oh, nope. Moving away, taking different angles, sliding off, And he kind of gets caught on the ropes right here, right? There's not a lot he can do, right? Once you're in this position, you know, you kind of get a free shot, but Ward does make him move first, and he's able to catch the shot. Ward coming in, feints him with the right hand, dips down, expecting a counter, defensively smart, and kind of throws a really weird right hand. Looks like his arm is broken when he's throwing it. You know, he's going to have to work on that, you know, become like a more complete fighter and be able to fight with both hands, because that right hand is just not going to cut it. All right, so throws a left, right, and then gets on top of his head. Now it looks like Kovalev is like super at fault right here. So he gets feinted, then he goes for the left, right, 1, 2, gets on top of his head. But one thing that you might not have noticed is that right after the first left comes, Ward has already grabbed Kovalev, and now he has him with both hands, right? And now he's holding him. So Kovalev doesn't really want to let his head go, so he pushes it to the side. He tries to, but Ward's holding him too and pushing him back, right? So he can't really do anything. It's just like an ugly tie-up, and it stems from, you know, Kovalev not being able to push off, right? He probably wants to push off, but he can't because Ward has a hold of him on the right side. Going back to the middle of the ring, and now if you notice right here, Kovalev has stopped using lead hand dominance, right? He's not trying to control him, and I think he's kind of gotten the sense that whenever he starts using it, that Ward kind of gets on his bicycle. You know, he doesn't really know how to handle it super well, and he winds up just chasing Ward away, which is, you know, very smart by Ward's account, right? By allowing him to control him and fight him in those areas, that's when he's going to be taking the most amount of clean punches. But by letting him know, hey, if you use this tactic, I'm just going to move away and try to pot shot you or try to hold you or whatever, it's going to discourage Sergey Kovalev from using it, because Sergey Kovalev is a fighter. He wants to land punches. He wants to fight. So it's an interesting tactic to take that tool away from him. You know, Mayweather has a very similar tactic too. At the beginning of his rounds, whenever his opponent just runs out right at him, he just gets onto the ropes and starts side straddle hopping, I think that's what it's called, and just goes all the way around the ring. You know, he'll put his hand out to control his opponent sometimes, but he just does laps around the ring until they cool down, until they stop coming at him with that kind of intensity. And it's just a really interesting mental game that you get your opponent in, because then they've got you kind of like, okay, so I want to be aggressive, but not too aggressive, and you kind of fall like right into their trap. You know, so it's really smart from Ward, although, you know, it's not what people really want to see, especially if they're a Kovalev fan. Anyway, good head movement from Kovalev, dips down, hides the right hand, but because, you know, I'm not sure if it's the angle, the fact that they change angles whenever Kovalev punches, but you can't really tell if it lands. I don't think it lands anyway, but I do want to kind of talk about this. It's really weird how they sit here all this time and then Kovalev throws a punch and then, you know, Illuminati. I don't know. I see it a lot with doing film studies. I pay attention to stuff like that, and I've noticed a lot of like angle changes when Kovalev punches, and I don't know. Anyway, maybe you guys can look at that yourselves and figure it out if you think there's something more to that or not. But it's not just in Kovalev fight; it's in other fights too, where the B side fighter is throwing punches or whatever. But anyway, really smart from Kovalev, even though he doesn't land his offense, throws the 2-1, gets control of Ward's head as Ward tries to wrap his arm around his body, right? Ward's trying to hold him, but what does Kovalev do? He pushes off, you know, and controls him on the way out and then slips the shot, right? Really smart. I think that's something he's going to need to do in the rematch to ensure that he's not held and, you know, find out a clever way to control Ward's head so he doesn't come in with his head and he's not able to hold and, you know, slow the fight down, make the fight kind of a stinker style fight. Feinting, Ward reacts to the feint, and then after reacting to the feint, really smart, even though he blocks his own vision, right? He's able to get under the next shot being really defensively responsible, knowing that he's out of position, he can't really take any time off. And he gets inside, and that's exactly where he wants to be. Even though he doesn't land any shots right there, I commend him for not holding right there and just going for the shot. Again, Kovalev trying to use lead hand dominance, and what does Ward do? Instantly, exactly, just move away. That's what he wants to do. Kovalev kind of eating a jab right here, and I've been kind of wondering about this. I've seen some highlights of Andre Ward, and I noticed that he does a lot of work from these positions. But it's interesting because once the ring is cut off right here, and Ward gets in these positions sometimes when he beats Kovalev to the line, Kovalev refuses to exchange with him, to be the one to lead or to be the one to feint and probe and do some things. And I wonder why that is. I wonder what he's seen on tape that Ward does from this position, because once he gets here, he always lets Ward lead, right? And this just seems like exactly where he wants Ward to be, but he's not leading. But anyway, he explodes off of the ropes. It looks like he touches him for a second, not like a clean, like solid shot or nothing. But right there, it looks pretty convincing. So maybe it is a good solid shot. But when he moves in to go to smother, right, Kovalev does a smart thing and just gets out of the way and doesn't allow him to kind of tie up. Some good head movement from Kovalev too after responsible defense. And then really interesting right here, Kovalev leads with that same left hook before, right? But he doesn't put any power into it because he's trying to set him up for the right hand. So earlier you saw him throw a left hook and then a right hand, and now he's following that up with the same kind of conditioning style that Ward was using with the body jabs into the head jabs, and gets him to turn into it. But Ward, very defensively responsible, even though he just blocked a shot or he turned away from a shot, he doesn't sit still and gets out of the way of that right hand, even though right after he turns away from the hook, even though it's not a real shot, he turns perfectly in line with the right hand, he still gets under it. And then Kovalev doing the smart thing after, sliding under and getting away, controlling his head. This right hand, it does get blocked. He just kind of explodes out of his guard, and then Kovalev tries to counter. I don't think he lands the counter, but then really good catch and counter from Ward right here. Right, sees the jab, gets his gloves up, gets under it, catches him with the body shot, and makes Kovalev miss with the right hand. Good work from Ward so far. I like that. That's very clean. Ooh, and man, this is beautiful. This is what he was setting up in the previous rounds, where he would jab to the body and stuff, and he does the same thing here. Here we go. Ducks down, makes Kovalev think it's going to be a jab to the body, and just pops him one. Good shot, great setup, and gets him with a shot to the head. Really smart. Feints him, and then kind of feints him again, but Kovalev doesn't really respond to the feint and just takes a step back. Not a lot going on there. Ooh, and again, god damn it. Dips down. Here you go. Dips down, makes him think the body shot again, catches him with the jab in the face again. Really good stuff. But look at how their heads come together right after that jab. I want to take a second. Like, a lot of people think the Ward, doesn't come in with his head and this and that, and they wonder why Kovalev tries to control his head so much, and it looks really dirty. And I admit, some of it looks pretty excessive. At least he's not usually punching when he's doing it. But let's take a look at this right here. So look where Andre Ward's head is right now. To the left of the monster sign, if you look at the ropes, right? And look at where Kovalev's head is, to the right of the Corona sign, right? The camera angle is moving a little bit. The camera is moving a little bit, so it's going to be a little less apparent. But after he gets hit, Ward jumps in, and now his whole body is covering the monster sign, right? Kovalev's head moves back behind the Corona sign a little farther because he just got hit. And then he comes up basically in the same spot that he was in, right? The camera is moving a little bit. Let's move back again just to check it out. And their heads kind of come together, but notice how much farther in Ward is, because after he lands that shot, he wants to smother Kovalev so he can't counter him, right? He gets his left hand over Kovalev's right arm and controls him. But coming in like that, trying to wrap his hands after that shot, trying to wrap his hands, his right hand over Kovalev's left hand and his left hand over Kovalev's right hand, causes him to come in with his head, and they kind of have like a little head clash right there. It doesn't really affect Ward because it's on the back of his head, but it could be really bad for Kovalev. Anyway, a little bit of wrestling and stuff. I got someone left me a comment. Oh, I missed all of Ward's sweet science, right? So here we are, holding and hitting, right? Wrestling. Is this really boxing, right? It's kind of boxing from Kovalev, finding a spot, landing a good shot, another good shot. Ward landed a punch on Kovalev's hip right here. That's not a legal blow. Misses that shot, kind of scrapes him with the thumb a little bit, not really landing a shot. And then look at this. Wraps his left arm around Kovalev's right side of his body, holds him there, tries to create space with his head, right? Nothing really wrong with that. But Kovalev is trying to push off and can't get away because Ward's holding him, and he lands that body shot right as he lets go. That shot shouldn't count. He shouldn't. Holding and hitting is not a part of boxing. What if, what if it was Kovalev the whole time that was holding and hitting, right? And he was just like, whatever. Rather than trying to control Ward on the inside, he just wraps his arm around his body and starts landing body shots. And you can't really argue that he's a better puncher than Ward. You can't argue that fact at all. How much outcry would there be for that kind of stuff, Does Ward get away with it because he's a gold medalist, because he's an American, because why, I don't really know. But anyway, he shouldn't be doing it, when that's not real inside fighting. Real inside fighting, you look at old-time fighters, they got their arm across their chest and the lower body protecting, and their elbow protecting their kidney, and they kind of move in forward like Philly shell kind of style, James Toney shit, finding openings, but holding your opponent's arms and that kind of stuff. It's not real inside fighting. Some Kovalev trying to get some lead hand dominance and probing now, right? Coming forward, probing him, and Ward, very smart, right? Reacts to it. And then just takes a step back, not willing to engage, not allowing the poor positioning that he puts himself into to affect him by just taking a step back. Ward showing that he's made a great adjustment for the feinting and the probing of Kovalev. And then, this is really interesting. So here he is, he dips to his left, and this is exactly the position that Kovalev wants to be in when Ward throws a jab. But I'm not sure why Kovalev's not throwing his right hand, right? That was a perfect position, but Ward just times his guard really well, right? And, Ward, again, I think that's the third or the fourth time that Ward has shown that he can pick Kovalev off in his transitions and in his little rotations of guard when he's setting up his punches. So I think Ward is, kind of finding something with this, and then also finding ways to land offense with the jabs to the body that he feints and then goes to the head, but most of his offense, he really hasn't found ways to set up offense other than these two avenues, with that trap and then timing his rhythm, and timing his rhythm is a big deal though. Like, I'm not trying to like downplay that. That's a big deal if he can do that and find holes in his rhythm in which he can attack. But anyway, moving on. Little feinting from Kovalev, a probe right there, and it doesn't look like that jab lands or that cross, so he feints him, changes angle, cuts the ring off, and it looks like Ward is able to slip that shot. Kovalev, really smart, after Ward counters with his own jab, but Kovalev, dips out, and I wonder why he didn't use this kind of level of footwork earlier in the fight to create space and find openings, really puzzling. Lands a good jab, Ward again with the body shot, right? And then right here, when I was watching this, he lands that jab, and then look at Ward's eyes, right? You can't see it, but Ward's eyes right after that body shot, they go straight to Kovalev's head, and I was watching this in slow-mo, and I was like, oh shit, he's going to do it right here, isn't he? And he dips down and tries to launch that shot to the head, but, Kovalev respecting it now, that the shot's not always going to come to his head. But what does Ward do right after missing this punch, right? He misses, controls him, right? And that's what you want to do, but he brings his whole body in here and then grabs Kovalev and tries to tie him up, ties up his arm. Kovalev's tying him up too now, but he's, I'm not sure if he lands a punch there. I don't really care either. But, it's a really interesting tension, being in the ring with Ward, because you never know when he's going to be tying you up and when he's not going to be tying you up and trying to throw punches. So sometimes, it's a really interesting mind game, when he does tie you up, right? So he's not tying him up here, so those punches might be legal, but because he doesn't know if he's going to be tied up or not, Kovalev instinctively goes in to tie him up, right? And that allows Ward to be, not those punches, that allows Ward, while they're tied up, to try and land some punches where he's not doing the holding and those punches are legal when Kovalev is holding instead. So it's a really interesting tension, but unfortunately it's predicated off of like illegal movements, right? An illegal tactic, holding anyway, right? But anyway, moving on. It's really smart, it's really interesting. But it's not really what people want to see when they're watching boxing. I don't think anyway. Anyway, good probing. Again, Ward saying, I don't know how to deal with that stuff. I'll just move out of the way. Comes in with his own jab. Kovalev gets out of the way of that. Ooh. And then Kovalev catches him with the jab off of his guard. Kovalev getting more active in his guard, not just relying completely on the probing to set up his offense, but now he dips to the right, and then as he comes in to dip to the left, Ward tries to control him with his jab, and he just counters him perfectly. Boom. Good shot. And I don't think any of the follow-up shots land, but let's see if that follow-up jab from him lands. Nope, it looks like Kovalev blocks it. But some really interesting developments. Oh, and that's a great shot. What? I don't even know how to call this, to be honest. This is on the same level of craft, setting a trap for your opponent, right? But puts his hands up, takes a step back, like he's going to walk out, like he's going to shoot to the left. Oh, and then jukes him right into a straight left hand from the southpaw stance. A really interesting technique. I wonder how many sparring partners he does that to, and then thinks like that'll never work in a real fight, and then just when the fight's starting to lull around, catches Ward with the shot like that. Now this is interesting. Right after that, Ward gets his left arm around Kovalev, right, holding him. Then gets his right arm around him, holding him. And now all these punches that Kovalev is landing, because Ward is the one holding, they're legal punches, right? But then all of a sudden, in the midst of that, Ward stops holding, right, and starts throwing his own punches, right? Are those legal punches because he holds from one side and lets go with the other, and you don't really know when he's holding and when he's not? It's very sneaky, it's very tricky, it's very crafty, and the judges are going to score some of those shots. There's just no way around it. Whether they're legal or not, the judges are going to score some of those shots because he's not always holding. It's just a weird little craft, like that dirty fighting, right? Like dirty boxing, people talk about that as being a craft of boxing. And, it's on that line of like semi-legal, semi-not. In my opinion, I don't really like it, but Kovalev gives him a feint again. Ward puts himself out of position, but smartly continues moving and gets out of the way and doesn't take any damage. And that's one thing that I do like about Ward is how much more, as the fight went on, he started to respect Kovalev. Like early in the fight, he wasn't respecting him a lot. He wasn't, appreciative of the feints, and he would kind of get caught out of position. And now, anytime he gets feinted and he moves and he respects the feint, he doesn't allow that feint to turn into like a probe style to set up offense, because he moves again, puts himself back out of position or back into position to defend himself, or uses head movement to stifle all of the damage that putting himself out of position would have cost him. So, Andre Ward's a good fighter, definitely a good fighter. Limited so far in the ways that he can set up his offense, most of it being predicated on, getting inside and kind of holding and hitting, which is not legal, transferring from one arm holding to hitting with the other arm, and, vice versa. But he does have a good jab. He set up some traps. He caught Kovalev with a couple of good jabs in this round. Seemingly close round. Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know who you guys thought won the round. Again, another round where, more predicated on Andre Ward's movement and his desire to not engage Kovalev when Kovalev is probing. But a close round nonetheless. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe or whatever. Thanks.